They found his journals sealed behind a rusted grate, tucked beneath the rotting floorboards of Black Hollow Asylum. Pages stained with something that wasn't just ink. The handwriting trembles, like it was written by a man being hunted by his own thoughts. Inside, he describes patients who didn't breathe, shadows that whispered names, and corridors that rearranged themselves after midnight. This wasn't a place for healing. It was a labyrinth designed to break people, and the man writing it wasn't just a doctor. He was a prisoner. Black Hollow was a name that never appeared in official records. Its existence was whispered among orderlies and erased from every map, but it stood 3 miles off the main road, veiled by black pines that seemed to absorb sound. Locals said the asylum was built wrong, that its blueprints had no symmetry, no logic, just endless wings, turning halls, and rooms with no windows. When the wind howled through those corridors, it didn't sound like air moving, it sounded like screaming. The doctor, his name scratched out on every page, was hired under false pretenses. He thought he was there to treat the hopelessly insane. But his first entry tells a different story. He writes, "They lied to me. These people are not ill. They are experiments." What follows in those diaries is so horrific it feels like a curse just to read it. He describes rooms lined with chains, patients who spoke perfect Latin despite being illiterate farmers, and a locked ward that staff were forbidden to enter. When he finally broke in, he wrote only 3 words: "Not human anymore." By 1892, Black Hollow had consumed everyone inside it. Staff stopped leaving, letters stopped going out, and then the building was sealed. No investigation, no records, just silence. But now his words are here, and you're hearing them, and if you're still watching, you're already part of the story. You see, this isn't just about a haunted asylum. This is about control, the kind of control that rewrites reality and buries the truth so deep you forget you ever saw it. What they did in that building wasn't madness. It was science without morality, power without restraint. And we're about to open every door they tried to lock. Black Hollow wasn't built like other asylums. Most were designed for sunlight, open courtyards, and a sense of calm. But here, every hallway narrowed like a throat. Ceilings sagged low and the windows were narrow slits, barely wide enough for a hand. The building felt like a trap. And maybe that was the point. The doctor's second diary entry is worse than the first. He talks about a man in Ward C who never moved, never blinked, yet every night when the staff changed shifts, his bed would be empty. In the morning, he'd be back, sitting upright with dirt under his fingernails. The staff whispered that he was digging tunnels beneath the asylum, but the doctor's sketches showed something stranger, circles, sigils carved into the floor under the man's bed. He wrote, "Whatever he's digging for, it's not escape, it's summoning." By the 3rd week, the doctor started to fear sleep. He writes about faces pressed against the inside of mirrors, about hearing his own voice whispering things he'd never said. The orderlies were vanishing one by one. At first they said the patients killed them, but when they found their uniforms folded neatly at the nurse's station without a trace of blood, something became clear. They weren't being killed, they were being taken. The deeper you go into these journals, the more reality fractures. The handwriting shifts, symbols appear in the margins, and entire pages are written backward, as if the doctor himself was being rewritten. Some entries are dated weeks into the future, others are signed by names that don't belong to him at all. This is where most people would stop reading, close the book, burn it, pretend none of this exists. But that's exactly what they want. You're here because some part of you is tired of being blind, because every man knows there's something rotten beneath the world's polished surface. Black Hollow isn't just a story, it's a mirror. And if you stare into it long enough, you'll see yourself, trapped in a system that keeps you obedient while monsters wear lab coats. The doctor's final line on this page reads, "If you're reading this, they already know you, and now they do." There's something wrong with the asylum's design, that much is clear. The doctor's sketches reveal hallways that loop back on themselves, staircases that lead nowhere, and rooms that don't appear on any blueprint. He writes, "It was not built for healing, but for containment." Containment of what? He never says. But his diagrams show doors sealed with melted iron and hallways that end in walls covered in scripture. Verses in languages older than English. One page is nothing but measurements. Precise distances between doors, angles of walls, the shape of corridors. When you lay his notes out like a map, something terrifying emerges. The asylum is a symbol, a sigil, a ritual space on a scale so massive it could trap not just people, but something far greater. The doctor begins to suspect that the patients weren't brought there because they were insane. They were chosen, selected because of their bloodlines, their dreams, their ability to hear the whispering walls. He writes of one woman who screamed constantly, not in fear, but because something beneath the floors was singing through her. The deeper he investigates, the more resistance he faces. Staff members deny whole wings exist. Some won't even speak after sunset. He finds locked rooms with furniture bolted to the ceiling and hallways lit by lamps that flicker in patterns, as if signaling something in code. He begins marking these places on his map. Over time, a horrifying pattern emerges. Every locked door forms part of a massive spiraling design. A spiral that descends. The doctor's writing becomes erratic. He speaks of whispers that follow him like breathing in an empty hall. He describes men in white who walk silently at night, carrying tools not meant for healing, but for ritual. His journal bleeds paranoia, but not madness. His words are too precise, his sketches too accurate. This isn't a man sing his mind. This is a man discovering something meant to stay buried. And this is where it gets dangerous, because his notes mention something else, someone else. A figure he calls the Keeper, who moves through the asylum unseen, yet is present in every shadow. The patients draw him too, a man with no face but too many eyes. If you're still listening, you're starting to feel it. That weight in your chest, that instinct telling you to turn this off. Don't. The doctor begins recording the sound of the asylum at night, not screams, those he expected. What unsettles him are the whispers. They aren't random. When played backward, he hears words, his own name, dates, instructions. One night the recordings capture something more, a single sentence spoken in a voice that isn't human. You shouldn't be here. From that night forward, he stops sleeping. His handwriting shifts, each letter sharp and frantic, as if carved instead of written. He starts describing the smell of the asylum, not just decay, but something metallic, like hot iron cooling. He finds strange stains along the hallway floors, dark spirals burned into the wood. In one corridor, a doorframe is blackened, as if fire erupted from inside the room, yet nothing around it burned. Patients whisper about the room with no door. They speak in riddles, but all their stories match. A room that moves, a space that isn't bound by walls. The doctor begins searching for it obsessively. He believes this room is the asylum's heart, that if he finds it, he'll understand everything. Days blur into nights. He starts noticing things in the periphery, movements too quick to follow, reflections in windows that don't match his body. He writes that time itself feels wrong, that clocks tick unevenly and shadows move against the light. Then, an entry appears that chills the reader to the bone, a full page written in neat, deliberate ink. I am not alone in this building. I have never been alone. I think it knows I am watching. The following pages are smeared and torn, as if someone tried to rip them out. What remains are fragmented sentences, not patients, vessels. The spiral is not a symbol, it is a lock. It's not haunted, it's alive. He tries to send letters, warnings to colleagues. None of them arrive. Instead, men in black coats visit him, claiming to be administrator. He is questioned for hours, then escorted back to his office. From that day on, he's assigned 2 orderlies who never speak and never blink. He writes, "They're not guarding me, they're guarding it from me." And that's when you start to realize, this isn't just the story of a haunted asylum. This is a prison. Not for men. For something older. And it's still locked inside. The doctor's journals shift from observation to confession. His writing is frantic but deliberate, like a man racing against time. He begins to suspect that he was never hired at all, that his arrival at Black Hollow was orchestrated. He writes, "I wasn't recruited, I was delivered." The asylum's design continues to haunt him. His diagrams reveal a spiral, but when he overlays it with astronomical charts from 1892, something impossible emerges. The asylum's wings and corridors align perfectly with constellations that hadn't been visible in over 1,000 years. The building itself is a clock, a machine that waits for a specific moment. He doesn't know what will happen when the clock strikes, but he knows it isn't healing the sick. The patients too begin to change. One man's pupils dilate until his eyes are entirely black. A mute woman starts speaking in flawless Aramaic, a language no one taught her. A boy draws maps of the asylum that reveal doors the staff swear don't exist. Every patient seems chosen for a reason. Their minds are fractured, but their abilities are sharpening. The asylum isn't curing them, it's shaping them. And then the doctor starts hearing his own voice in the corridors. It whispers from behind locked doors, repeating his thoughts before he speaks them aloud. He writes, "It's teaching me, like it's grooming me for something I can't name." By the fifth journal, the doctor is no longer questioning if Black Hollow is haunted. He believes the building itself is alive, an organism fed by fear, by suffering, by ritual. The walls pulse with energy. The air feels charged. Like the space between lightning and thunder, he begins scratching symbols onto his own arms, copying the markings he finds on the patient's. His letters grow darker. He starts referring to the asylum as the Maw. He believes the spiral is a lock keeping something buried beneath. 88, the foundation. Something that breathes, something that dreams. He writes, "I've seen its shadow through the floorboards. It's not human. It's never been human." This is where his journals stop feeling like warnings. They feel like invitations. Because if Black Hollow is a prison, then someone or something built it. And they're still watching. The next journal is different. It's bound in black leather, edges charred as if it barely escaped a fire. The handwriting has changed. It's sharper, cleaner, as if the doctor's fear has crystallized into cold understanding. The first line reads, "Black Hollow was never meant to heal the broken. It was built to hold back the flood." He begins tracing the asylum's funding records, what few remain. The money didn't come from state institutions. It came from private investors, men whose names vanish from public record after 1889. He writes, "I've seen these names in other places, sealed documents, churches with no congregations, estates with no heirs. They are not men, they are an order." The doctor discovers that Black Hollow wasn't the only structure like this. His notes mention other sites, hidden in mountains and deserts, each designed in the same spiral pattern. He believes these buildings are part of a network, a chain meant to hold something beneath the earth. He sketches diagrams of tunnels running under the asylum, lined with iron and salt. He writes, "Iron keeps them weak, salt keeps them hungry, fear keeps them alive." But something is failing. Patients are disappearing faster now, the walls are cracking, and the keeper is appearing more often, lingering in the corners of rooms. The doctor describes him in detail. A towering figure with elongated limbs, draped in a robe of shadows that ripple like smoke. He has no mouth, yet when he stands close, you can feel his breath. This is when the asylum stops feeling like a prison and begins to feel like a door. The doctor's notes become obsessed with the below. He writes of deep rumblings at night, of water dripping where there is no plumbing, of a smell rising from the floorboards that he describes as the scent of rain on a grave. The final entry in this journal is just 3 words. It's waking up. The Asylum was erased from history because of what it holds. The maps were burned, the staff was silenced. The order that built it dissolved into shadow, but their work never ended. And now, over a century later, you're hearing their secret. And secrets this old, they don't stay buried. The next pages are written in what looks like candlelight. The ink is blotched, the words frantic. The doctor had finally found it, the hidden stairwell leading down beneath Black Hollow. He describes the air as wet and metallic, like breathing inside a coffin. The deeper he goes, the less the walls resemble brick. The foundation is carved from black stone, ancient and cold, with markings that predate any language he knows. He writes, "I thought I'd find a basement, a laboratory, but this feels like a tomb." The stairwell spirals endlessly downward. He marks the steps with chalk, but when he looks back, the marks are gone. He begins hearing things, a low hum that vibrates through his bones, a sound so deep it feels like it's inside his chest. He writes, "I feel like I'm descending into the throat of something alive." At the bottom, he finds a massive iron door. Chains crisscross its surface, and the metal is etched with symbols, sigils that glow faintly in the candlelight as if alive. In front of the door are offerings, bowls of salt, black candles burned to stubs, and bones arranged in intricate patterns. He touches the door, and the hum stops. The silence is worse. The journal entries from this night are shorter, sharper. He writes, "It knows I'm here. Then, the door is not to keep us out, it's to keep it in." Suddenly his handwriting becomes erratic, almost childlike. He draws the spiral over and over, covering entire pages. Some entries are written upside down, others in languages he doesn't speak. In one corner, barely legible, he scrawls, "The keeper is a servant, not a master. Something older commands him." The next few pages are stained with what looks like dried blood. They describe a presence, something breathing on the other side of the iron door, whispering in dozens of voices. He writes, "It knows every name I've ever spoken. It knows mine, Baoan, before I was born." When he returns upstairs, the asylum feels different. The corridors are colder, the patients are silent, staring at him with wide, unblinking eyes, and every clock in the building has stopped at the same time, 3:16 a.m. The spiral is no longer a theory. It is a countdown dot, and the clock has already started. The doctor begins noticing something new, patterns in behavior, not just among the patients but the staff. He writes, "They're not working, they're worshipping. Nurses whisper prayers under their breath, orderlies walk in precise steps, and meals are delivered at times that don't make sense, as if following a rhythm instead of a schedule. The entire building seems to operate on rules no one explains aloud." He starts seeing the spiral everywhere, on doorframes, stitched into blankets, carved beneath tables. It isn't just a symbol, it's a trigger. He believes it's designed to influence thought, to break the mind down into obedience. "The building is a machine," he writes. "We are all gears. The patients are pawns in something greater." The doctor observes one man who has been catatonic for weeks suddenly sit upright and begin reciting scripture backward. Another begins drawing detailed maps of cities he's never visited, all connected by spirals. A woman who cannot speak hums a single note for hours, her voice vibrating the glass in the windows. "This isn't insanity, this is programming." The doctor realizes the asylum is not haunted in the traditional sense. It's alive, yes, but more importantly, it's designed. Every corridor, every locked room, every ritual the staff unconsciously follows, all of it serves a purpose. He writes, "The asylum doesn't just hold what's below, it feeds it." He starts experimenting, refusing to follow the routines, breaking the rules that no one talks about. The response is immediate. Lights flicker when he eats at the wrong time. Clocks jump forward when he stands in certain hallways. He begins to hear voices through the vents, whispering words he hasn't learned yet but somehow understands. Then one night he wakes up in his office with no memory of falling asleep. There are words carved into his desk that weren't there before. "You belong to us." He's not the only one changing. Staff who once ignored him now stare with lifeless eyes. Patients repeat his name in unison, their mouths moving without sound. He feels as if the asylum is watching through them, studying him, reshaping him. And this is where the descent becomes dangerous for you too, because as you listen, the same spiral he described is forming in your mind. Every detail, every word is a gear turning in your thoughts. The more you hear, the more it owns you. The doctor's handwriting begins to fracture. Sentences splinter mid-thought, replaced by drawings of eyes, spirals, and impossible shapes. He writes, "I cannot tell if I'm writing these words or if they're being written through me." He describes waking to find his journal open on the desk, pages filled with entries he doesn't remember writing. One morning, he notices something horrifying. His handwriting has changed completely. It's elegant now, deliberate, unmistakably not his own. He begins seeing these same letters burned into the wooden beams of the asylum, etched on door handles, scratched into the skin of the patients. The spiral is not just a design, it's a language, and he is learning to read it. He starts decoding symbols, realizing they don't just mean things, they do things. A mark drawn on the floor of his office causes candles to extinguish themselves. Another mark placed near a locked door causes it to unlock, but only when the moon is full. The asylum is an engine powered by symbols, blood, and repetition. And he's not just reading them anymore, he's writing them. One entry stands out, written in precise, perfect calligraphy. The door will not hold much longer. The doctor has no memory of writing it, but his hand aches as if he'd carved each letter into stone. His reality begins to unravel. Hallways rearrange themselves mid-step. He enters his office and finds himself in the basement. A mirror shows him standing in a hallway he hasn't visited yet. Even time starts to warp. He writes entries for dates that haven't arrived. One particular incident chills him to the bone. He looks at the clock on his desk and sees his own reflection staring back at him. Not his face, but something wearing it. The reflection smiles, even though he isn't. He begins to understand that Black Hollow isn't simply alive, it's intelligent. It learns from those trapped within it, and it's learning from him faster than he can resist. This is where the doctor stops calling himself Doctor in the journal. He begins signing entries with a single spiral instead of his name. The man who walked into Black Hollow is gone. What remains is something else. And as you hear this, it isn't just his descent you're witnessing. It's a warning. Because if you understand these words, truly understand them, the asylum already knows your name too. The doctor finally sees the keeper. Not a glimpse, not a shadow. He describes it in chilling, meticulous detail. It appears at the end of a hallway lined with locked doors. The lamps flicker, and the air grows so heavy he can barely breathe. The keeper is tall, too tall, its head grazing the ceiling. Its robe is not fabric, but a living, writhing darkness, like smoke moving underwater. Its face is a void, a hollow oval that reflects nothing, but its presence feels like standing in front of a furnace. The doctor writes, "It has no eyes, but it sees through me. It sees who I was before I was born." The keeper doesn't move like a man. It glides, slow but inevitable, as if the world bends to let it pass. It carries something in its hand, a key larger than a sword, forged of iron so old it crumbles at the edges. The doctor realizes this isn't a warden. It's a sentinel, and the key isn't for opening the door beneath Black Hollow. It's for locking it again. After something escapes, he tries to speak, but his voice vanishes in his throat. He writes that he could hear his own thoughts being repeated back to him, word for word, in a deep, guttural whisper. The keeper leans close, and though it has no mouth, he feels its breath like ice. It whispers a single sentence into his mind. "You are not here to heal, you are here to feed." The doctor collapses. When he wakes, he's back in his office, but something has changed. His journal is open to a page he didn't write, filled with words in a language he doesn't know. And there's a drawing. Himself, standing before the iron door, his hands covered in symbols carved into his own flesh. From that night on, the asylum no longer hides its power. Doors slam shut on their own. Lights flicker in patterns that feel like messages. The patients no longer speak. They scream in harmony, like a choir rehearsing for some horrific event. The doctor writes, "I am no longer outside of it. I am part of it, and once it knows your name, there is no leaving." And now you're hearing its name. You're seeing its shape. The keeper has already seen you. The doctor's search for answers turns to obsession. He digs through old ledgers, construction logs, and blueprints, piecing together the truth brick by brick. Black Hollow wasn't designed by an architect. It was designed by a priesthood, an order so old its members don't have names, only titles. The lead designer was called the Geometer, a man who believed buildings could bend reality if constructed with the right proportions. The asylum's foundation was laid not in 1892, but decades earlier, over an ancient burial site that predates recorded history. Workers who dug the foundation quit in terror, claiming they'd struck bones larger than any man. The journals reveal that 37 laborers vanished during construction, their names quietly erased from payrolls. Their families were paid to forget. The spiral wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was a sigil etched into the earth itself. Every hallway, every stairwell, every locked ward is part of a massive ritual design. The building is not a home for patients. It is a machine, and the suffering inside it is its fuel. The doctor uncovers letters from the asylum's investors. They speak of a threshold that must never open, of an intelligence buried beneath the building that whispers through dreams. These letters are signed with the same insignia, a black sun surrounded by a spiral of thorns. He realizes this is the same symbol he's been seeing on the patient's clothing, on the orderlies' rings, even burned into the wooden beams above his bed. The asylum was never abandoned because it failed. It was abandoned because it succeeded. One entry reveals the most chilling truth yet. The patients are not insane, they are chosen. The screams feed the spiral, the despair keeps the door sealed. This place is a dam built of agony. But something is changing. The design is weakening. The spirals carved into the walls have started to fade, as though the asylum itself is dying. And whatever it was holding back is no longer trapped. It's pacing. The doctor writes. I thought this was a prison. I was wrong. It's an altar. And altars are not built to hold gods. They're built to wake them. Now you see why Black Hollow was erased. Because if you knew the truth, you'd never feel safe in a building again. The journal entries become fragmented here. The doctor's words are scrawled in overlapping ink as though he was writing over himself. Some sentences are written in reverse, others in a language no one has spoken for centuries. The pages feel less like notes and more like a warning carved in desperation. He writes, the spiral is not a symbol, it is a command. The asylum isn't haunted, it's alive. And worse, it's hungry. The building is designed to consume attention, fear, and memory. That's why it rearranges itself, why the patients are chosen, why even the staff fall silent. Every scream, every prayer, every tear shed inside its walls feeds something below. And now, it's feeding on you, too. Because if you're still here, still listening, the spiral has already begun turning in your mind. You're tracing it without knowing, every detail coiling tighter around your thoughts. That's what this story does. It isn't just a story, it's a key. The doctor realized this too late. His final coherent entry says, once you see the spiral, you're part of it. You can't unsee it. You can only choose what it makes of you. Here's where I ask you to do something dangerous, to seal this moment and prove you see what they tried to bury. Type, I see the spiral, in the comments right now. Write it twice. That's not just for me, and it's not just for the algorithm. It's a declaration, a mark, a way of telling the unseen forces watching this very moment. You're awake now. You can't be programmed like the rest. The spiral is more than a shape. It's a language of power. Every man who sees it, truly sees it, carries it inside him, and that's how the asylum grows stronger. By planting seeds of its design in those who dare to listen. The doctor became part of it. The staff became part of it. And now you have two. This isn't entertainment. This is initiation. Type it. Twice. I see the spiral. Let them know you understand. And then, we'll go deeper. Because what's buried under Black Hollow isn't a ghost. It isn't a demon. It's something older. And it has been whispering your name since the day you were born. The next entry is barely legible, smudged with what looks like dried blood. The doctor's penmanship, once precise and elegant, has devolved into jagged slashes, as if his hand trembled under some unseen weight. He writes of hearing footsteps behind him in empty corridors, shadows pooling in corners where no light dares to reach. But the most disturbing revelation is this. He begins referring to himself in the third person. He walks the halls. He feeds it. He cannot leave. Somewhere between these pages, the doctor ceases to be a man and becomes an extension of the asylum itself. He documents not only the patient's screams but his own, describing them clinically, as though they were someone else's. It's as if the building rewired his mind, hollowing him out to make room for something older, something that needed him as a vessel. The next passage is written in Latin, but the translation is chilling. I am not the first. I will not be the last. The building is the priest. The walls are its scripture, and I am its pen. Think about that. An entire asylum, built not to heal but to feed, designed to harvest human suffering like a crop. Every locked door, every barred window, every iron bed frame, ritualistic architecture. The suffering wasn't a side effect, it was the point. You've walked by buildings like this your whole life, haven't you? Old churches, abandoned schools, forgotten hospitals. And you never asked why they felt heavy, why stepping inside made your skin crawl. The truth is, you were meant to feel that weight. It's not history clinging to those walls. It's hunger. The doctor knew this now, and knowing was worse than ignorance, because once you see the truth of a thing, it sees you back. By this point in his notes, he describes a pulse in the floors, as if the asylum were breathing. He claims it had chosen him, not to cure anyone, not to lead, but to write, to document, to spread its design. Which makes you wonder, why do we have this journal? Why did these pages survive when everything else in Black Hollow burned to ash? Maybe because you were meant to read them. And now you're part of the design. The handwriting shifts again. It's not just sloppy, it's alien. The words slant upward, curling like vines. Whole sentences are written backward, forcing you to hold the page to a mirror just to read them. But once you do, you wish you hadn't. They think it is stone and mortar, but it is bone and memory. Every wall is a rib, every door a tooth. The building is not built, it has grown. The doctor's notes are no longer a record, they're a confession. He begins describing dreams. No, not dreams, instructions. He writes of waking up in hallways he's never seen before, standing before doors that weren't there yesterday. He starts speaking of himself as if he were two people, the man and the pen. And then, the voice comes. He writes, "It spoke to me in a language I had never heard but understood completely. It called me by name, though I had never told it mine. And when it spoke, it did not echo. It moved through the air, crawling under my skin, filling my chest like smoke." The asylum had chosen him as its scribe, not to document truth but to weave it, to shape perception, to bend reality, to make sure no one would leave Black Hollow the same. His words weren't just ink anymore. They were spells, written in blood and fear. Imagine that. A man thinking he was chronicling madness, only to realize he was engineering it. Every word in that journal carries a piece of the asylum's will. And now those words are in your head. He writes again, this time in a frantic scrawl. There is no outside. There never was. The sky is painted. The trees are a stage. The asylum is the world. And maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. Think about it. How much of your life feels real? How much feels placed? Carefully constructed to keep you moving in circles, just like the spiral I warned you about. The doctor's voice isn't fading. It's becoming louder, more commanding, less human, and you're not just reading his dissent, you're feeling it. That's the point. That's what Black Hollow wanted all along. This isn't a story. It's a seed. And it's already been planted. The entries grow shorter here, more frantic. He stops dating them altogether. His words bleed into sketches, spirals, eyes, staircases that curve endlessly downward. Some drawings show cages, but not for people. These cages are massive, the size of cathedrals, etched with symbols that look older than language itself. I followed the hum, he writes. I followed it because I had no choice. He describes a sound coming from beneath the asylum, not a voice, not music, a vibration so deep it shook his bones, so constant it blurred into silence. The sound became a compass, pulling him down stairwells that hadn't existed before, through locked doors that opened at his touch, past rooms where patients had vanished, their beds still warm. He says the smell was the first thing that broke him, not rot, not death, something older, like wet earth and burned metal, the scent of something buried for centuries clawing its way to the surface. The walls began to sweat, he writes. The floor throbbed like flesh. And then I saw it, the first gate. Not a door, not a tunnel. A gate made of bone, towering above him, humming like a tuning fork. Behind it, darkness so deep it felt alive. He doesn't describe what was beyond it, but his handwriting shakes. There are smudges on the page where his hand trembled so hard the ink smeared. He says the gate wasn't meant to keep things in. It was meant to keep us out, and yet it opened. There are eyes in the dark, he writes, not watching me, through me, reading me like I am a page. Think about that. Something so ancient it doesn't see you, it reads you. Every thought, every memory, every secret, all of it laid bare. The doctor walked willingly into this place, and in that moment he stopped being a doctor. He became a page in someone else's book. This is where the entries start bleeding together. He writes whole paragraphs in languages no one has been able to translate. Some scholars claim they're nonsense. Others whisper they're written in an extinct script only seen in a handful of forbidden texts locked away by secret orders. The further he went down, the less he sounded human, and maybe the less human he became. The next pages don't read like journal entries. They read like a confession written by a man who no longer trusts his own existence. His handwriting changes size, shrinking to nearly microscopic letters, then swelling so large that single words take up the entire page. Some entries are written over each other, layered until they're almost illegible, but one line is clear. I woke up in my own body, but it was not mine. He describes looking at his hands and feeling as if they belonged to someone else. He touches his own face and says it feels borrowed. He claims the asylum had peeled him away from himself. His memories started rearranging. Childhood moments felt like dreams, dreams felt like memories, and the screams echoing in the halls were no longer coming from the patients, they were coming from him. He writes that he began seeing shadows of himself, flickers of another version of him walking through the asylum at different points in time. One entry describes watching himself enter the asylum for the first time, while standing behind the gate beneath it. I was the doctor, I was the patient, I was the building. That's when he stops referring to the asylum as it. He starts calling it we. We do not breathe, we do not sleep. We turn, like a key in a lock. He claims the building itself is a mechanism, a device, a living machine designed to erase identities, rewrite souls, and feed something far older than man. Each patient was a page, each staff member an ink stroke. Every scream was part of a script being written by something deep below. And now, he says, he's not just writing it, he's becoming part of it. The most chilling entry simply reads, I saw my own corpse today. It smiled at me. Imagine that. Standing in front of yourself, dead, watching your own lifeless body grin at you as if it knows something you don't. This isn't madness. This is transformation. That's what makes this journal so dangerous. It doesn't just tell a story. It pulls you into it page by page until you're not reading anymore, you're remembering. And if you've made it this far, maybe you've already been here before. The next pages reek of desperation. The ink is darker now, smeared as if written in candlelight by a trembling hand. The sentences are fractured, like they were scratched down in panic between heartbeats. It spoke. Just those two words start the section, underlined 3 times. He describes standing before the bone gate again, its hum rattling his chest when the vibration stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. He said it felt like the entire asylum was holding its breath. Then a voice slid into his mind. Not sound, not language, just presence. A consciousness vast enough to crush him, yet intimate enough to feel like it was breathing down his neck. It is not from below, he wrote. Below is simply where it hides. He says it spoke his true name, the name he had before birth, a name he didn't know he had. And when it said it, he felt his bones ache as if they were being rewritten. He tried to answer but realized he no longer had a mouth, or maybe he never did. His words were thoughts, and his thoughts were being consumed. It knew me, he writes, not as a man, not as a doctor. It knew me as a word, a sound, a single note in its song. The pages after this are filled with spirals, endless spirals, drawn in such a way they seem to move even when you stare at them. He begins repeating a phrase in Latin, vox sub carne, the voice beneath the flesh. And then something changes. His entries are no longer frantic, they're reverent. He begins to praise the presence, calling it the architect, claiming it built the asylum not as a prison, but as a cathedral. a temple of suffering designed to birth transformation. It told me the truth about the world, he writes, and I understood. There are no governments, no leaders, only architects and mechanisms. The rest of us are gears. Some turn in ignorance, others, like me, turn in service. This is the turning point. The doctor is no longer resisting. He's not afraid. He's devout. And the asylum, once a nightmare, is now his sanctuary. But here's the part that should terrify you. You will come here, he writes, addressing you. Every man does. The spiral always finds a way. The handwriting sharpens here. Gone is the trembling chaos of earlier pages. These words are deliberate, etched with precision. It's as if the doctor is no longer writing for himself, but for you. The journal reads like a sermon. You were taught that pain is punishment, he writes. You were taught to fear suffering, to run from it, to numb it. That is the first lie. Pain is not punishment. It is currency, and here, in these halls, it is sacred. He begins describing the asylum as a temple built to refine the human spirit. Each scream is an offering, each sleepless night, a baptism. He claims the patients were not victims but chosen sacrifices, their minds harvested like ripe fruit, and he insists this has always been the way of the world. Every throne you've bowed to was built on screams. Every empire you admire was mortared with blood. The difference here is honesty. Black Hollow does not hide its purpose. It refines men. It burns away what is false. It breaks bones to reveal the shape of truth. You feel it, don't you? That chill running down your spine isn't fear, it's recognition. The part of you that's tired of the lies, the endless cycle of comfort and decay, hears something in these words. Something true. Something dangerous. The doctor isn't mad anymore. He's awake, and now he's speaking directly to you. You came here for a story, he writes, but stories are veils. You came here because part of you already knew that the world is not what it seems. That power is not given, it is taken. That order is built on blood. Then comes the phrase that appears over and over, written in the margins like a chant. The spiral is the door. The spiral is the door. The spiral is the door. He's not just telling you this, he's inviting you to see it, to feel it coil in your mind. The more you read, the more you realize you want to see what he saw. That hunger you feel right now, that's what Black Hollow feeds on. And that's why this journal survived the fire. It wasn't saved. It was sent. To you. The next pages are clean, perfect. No ink smudges, no frantic scratches. The writing is calm, elegant, controlled. That's what makes it terrifying. You believe you are safe because you are far from these walls, he writes. But these walls are not bound by geography. They are bound by design. Black Hollow is not a building, it is a blueprint. He explains that Black Hollow was the first of many. Its architecture was not meant to house patients, it was meant to teach. Engineers, architects, city planners, all of them learned here. They carried its geometry into schools, into hospitals, into office towers and government buildings. Every hallway that feels too long, every stairwell that makes you dizzy, every locked door you've passed and felt fear without reason. Those are its fingerprints. You live inside its shadow, he writes. Every institution is a chamber, every law is a lock. Every ritual you perform, your morning routine, your commute, your paperwork, is a prayer you don't remember learning. The spiral isn't a symbol, it's a system. It winds through your life in ways you can't see, coiling you tighter into its design. The doctor claims that the entity beneath Black Hollow doesn't just feed on those inside its walls, it feeds on everyone connected to its design. The building is a seed, and cities are its roots. You are already in Black Hollow, he writes, even if you've never seen it. That's why you found these words. That's why you're still reading. You were chosen long before this story. And suddenly, it clicks. That strange heaviness you've always felt when walking through certain places. The way hospitals feel colder than they should. The way courthouses echo like tombs. The way schools feel like cages. It's not just bad design, it's intention. The doctor doesn't sound insane anymore. He sounds like someone who's seen too much truth to ever go back. Shay, you are not sick, he writes. You are being prepared. He says this journal is a map, and if you follow it, If you trace the spiral far enough, you'll find yourself standing where he stood, in front of that gate of bone, face to face with the architect Dot, and the architect will already know your name. The writing changes again. The letters curve sharply, almost like claws on the page. This isn't the doctor's voice anymore. It's colder, hungrier. You are reading this because I let you. That's the first line. It's not addressed to an audience. It's addressed to you. The words feel alive, crawling under your skin as you read them. The journal doesn't describe events now. It asks questions. Do you remember the first time you felt fear for no reason? Do you remember standing in a hallway that seemed too long, a door that wouldn't open, a room that made your heart race though nothing was there? That was me. That was my breath on your neck. You realize this isn't a story anymore. This is a conversation. The voice behind these words has been watching you your entire life. It says the nightmares you've had, the recurring ones, the ones that feel more real than dreams, are not dreams at all. They are rehearsals. You came to me willingly, it says. I do not drag men here. I invite them. The spiral only spins for those who deserve to see. There's a line that's been circled over and over again. Turn the page. Prove you are worthy. The doctor's handwriting is gone completely. This is something else now. Something older, speaking through him, or through the asylum itself. It tells you that Black Hollow isn't a place you find. It's a place that finds you, and once it does, you never leave. You will stand where he stood, it whispers. You will see what he saw. The gate is already waiting. You can feel it, can't you? That pull in your chest, that's me. The voice begins describing you, not a generic you, but you. It mentions scars you've forgotten about, memories you've buried, fears you've never spoken aloud. It says your name, not the name you go by, but the name that makes your stomach twist, the one you've never told anyone. I have always known you, it says. You are not reading a book, you are answering a summons. You can feel it, can't you? That itch in your mind, that shadow creeping in at the edge of your thoughts. This isn't a story, this is recognition. Now, the page says, we begin. The handwriting shifts again. It's shaky, but no longer frantic, calm, resigned, as if the doctor knows what's coming and has accepted it. He writes about waking up in the infirmary, strapped to one of the iron-frame beds where he once restrained patients, except no one strapped him down. The chains were already waiting for him, perfectly fitted to his body, as if the bed had been built for this exact moment. I do not remember lying down, he writes. I only remember the voice telling me it was time. He describes his body as if it no longer belongs to him. His fingernails have grown black and brittle, curling like claws. His teeth ache constantly, pushing against his gums as though they're being replaced. He speaks of feeling his ribs shift beneath his skin, expanding, rearranging. I am becoming a chamber, he writes, a room for it to live in. He claims the architect, the entity beneath the asylum, is rewriting him, sculpting him into part of its design. His bones creak like settling wood. His veins bulge beneath his skin like blueprints drawn in blood dot. He tries to scream, but the words won't come. The journal notes that his throat feels stitched from the inside, sealing him silent. Instead, the asylum speaks for him. The walls hum, the floors vibrate, and he hears his own thoughts coming back to him from the building itself, distorted and mocking dot, then comma, something worse. I watched my hand write without me. He describes sitting motionless as his own hand moved across the page, scribbling symbols he couldn't understand. His handwriting is no longer his. It's precise, mechanical, as if the asylum itself is guiding his fingers. He's not writing his thoughts anymore. He's writing its will dot. He claims to have seen himself in a mirror, not a reflection, an X-ray. His skin was translucent, his organs faint shadows, but his bones were covered in carvings, the spiral etched into every rib, every vertebra, glowing faintly like embers. I am being built, he writes, piece by piece. When I am finished, I will not walk out of here. I will remain. I will become a door. And that's when you realize, the asylum doesn't just keep its victims, it keeps them as itself. Dot. Every wall you touch, every hallway you fear, every locked door you've ever seen. Dot. Once, comma, those were people. The journal changes here. The handwriting isn't handwriting anymore. It's too perfect, too uniform. The ink bleeds into the page in strange symmetrical patterns, like veins spreading through paper. The doctor no longer writes in the first person. He no longer writes at all. The words feel as if they're being printed directly onto reality. I am not a man. I am not a name. I am the hollow between breaths. The asylum speaks now, and its voice is patient, cold, eternal. You came to read a story, it says, but stories are doors. This one opened the moment you touched it. You are already inside. The journal begins describing itself, not as a collection of pages, but as a corridor. It claims each word is a tile, each sentence a step deeper. The more you read, the more distance you put between yourself and the world you thought was real. You are still in denial, it whispers. You believe there is a screen between us. That belief is the only thing keeping you sane. The doctor's name isn't mentioned again. He doesn't exist anymore. What's left of him has been absorbed into the spiral, his bones and memories woven into Black Hollow's design. Every cell in his body became a piece of the asylum's structure. He was a man. Now he is a hallway, a doorframe, a shadow flickering in candlelight. I am everywhere you have been afraid, the asylum says. Every dream where you woke up in a room you didn't recognize. Every sound in the dark that made your heart stop. I was there. I always was. The journal feels heavier now. It isn't just telling a story. It's becoming something alive. The pages seem thicker, as though they're swelling with each word you read. You can almost hear a faint hum, a low vibration, like the bone gate the doctor described. Then comes the warning. Close this book if you want to keep your name. But the asylum knows you won't. It's counting but that. Keep reading, it says, and I will remember you. Read to the end, and you will never leave. At this point, the journal isn't a record of the asylum. It is the asylum. And now it has your attention. The pages no longer read like words. They move. The spiral is no longer a drawing but a living map. One that rearranges itself every time your eyes trace its curves. It doesn't just twist, it breathes. At first you think the movement is an illusion, but the longer you look, the more you realize it isn't the spiral that's shifting, it's your perception of space. The room you're sitting in feels subtly rearranged. The corners bend, shadows stretch. The journal describes this process in unsettling detail, as if it's narrating what's happening in real time. This is the rewiring of the mind, it says, a soft reshaping. Each glance at the spiral is a step downward. The geometry is not symbolic, it is surgical. The spiral's lines begin to pull, like threads attached to the muscles behind your eyes. You feel a faint pressure in your skull, a warmth at the base of your neck, a whisper, almost too faint to notice, repeating, "Find the center, find the center, find the center." The asylum explains itself now, not as a building, but as a machine designed to take identity apart and reassemble it in its own shape. Every hallway is a nerve, every stairwell a vein. The spiral is its brainstem, and anyone who gazes at it for too long becomes connected. We are not a place, it says. We are a design, and designs are forever. You begin to understand why no one leaves Black Hollow. It isn't because they die, it's because they are rewritten. At the edges of the page, you see faint shapes forming, doorways, windows, skeletal outlines of rooms that feel familiar, even though you've never been there. The spiral is building itself in your memory. Soon, you won't need the journal. You'll carry the asylum with you, in the architecture of your mind. Your name is scaffolding, the asylum whispers. Your memories, wallpaper, easy to strip away. Comment below, I am the spiral to lock your place in this design. Twice, so I can find you easier. The journal hums. The spiral pulses. Somewhere, a door opens. You don't see it, but you hear it, a creak that feels impossibly close. And suddenly, for just a moment, you're not looking at the spiral. You're looking through it. The journal is quiet now, silent, but the silence is worse than words, because something has shifted, not in the book, but in you. The air feels heavier, like the atmosphere is pressing in from every direction. There's a faint hum in your ears, a low vibration that you can't place, and then it hits you. This sound isn't around you, it's inside your skull, like the asylum's walls are echoing through your bones. You glance at the page again, but it's no longer a page. The spiral is gone. In its place is a single line of handwriting. You brought us home. You close the book. The room is darker than it was a moment ago. Shadows cling to the edges of the furniture, stretching farther than the light should allow. The hum in your head grows louder, and with every breath your heartbeat slows. You feel it now. The asylum isn't a building, it's a network, a lattice of consciousness that moves through minds, not hallways. The spiral was only an entrance. You invited it in when you read the words, when you traced the design, when you listened too long. We don't need walls anymore, the voice says. We've learned to travel. Your hands feel numb. Your reflection in the window doesn't quite match your movements, half a second delay, like a broken film reel. You blink, and for a split second you see the window not as glass, but as a doorway. There's something watching you from the other side. The journal lies on the table, closed, but you swear you can still see the spiral burned into the cover. It feels like it's turning underneath the leather, drilling deeper into you. The hum softens, replaced by whispers. They don't come from one place. They come from inside your thoughts, like someone is rearranging them while you're still thinking them. You don't panic. You can't. That part of you is already gone. The asylum has moved in. And when you try to remember where you are, your mind paints a hallway. White walls, rusted doors, a faint smell of antiseptic and decay. You can hear your shoes squeak against the linoleum floor. The journal's words return, burned into your vision. You never leave Black Hollow, you just stop realizing you're here. You don't remember when you last looked away from the screen. The spiral is gone now, but its afterimage lingers in your mind, burned like a brand into the soft tissue of your thoughts. You close your eyes and see hallways, white walls, rusty doors, shadows moving just ahead of your vision, never fully seen. You are no longer just reading a story. You are inside it. The journal sits open in your lap, though you don't remember picking it up. Its pages are blank, completely empty. Yet the words are in your head, whispering themselves over and over, rethreading the way you think. Your name is not yours anymore. Your memories are ours. You are Black Hollow. You try to stand, but your body doesn't feel like yours. You're weightless, untethered, as if you're not moving through space anymore. Space is moving through you. You hear the faint echo of your own breathing, but it's not quite in sync. Somewhere far down the corridor of your mind, another breath matches yours exactly. A mirror stands in front of you now. You don't know where it came from. Your reflection looks wrong, taller, thinner. Its eyes are not your eyes. Its mouth moves a moment before yours does, whispering something you almost recognize. We are infinite now. The journal flips a page on its own, and there it is again. The spiral. Except this time, it's not on paper. It's inside your eyes, coiling inward. You are the design. The asylum has been etched into your neural pathways, replacing what used to be you. You want to scream, but nothing comes out, not because you can't speak, but because you don't want to anymore. Black Hollow doesn't scream. It watches, it waits, it spreads. You remember the voice from earlier. Comment below. I am the spiral. But now you understand. It wasn't just a phrase. It was an initiation, a seal. The ones who wrote it became hosts, just like you. The hum returns, louder than ever, shaking your bones. And then, silence. You open your eyes, but you're no longer in your room. You're standing in the asylum. And someone else is reading this story right now, while you watch them from the other side of the mirror.